Cześć, dzień dobry. Nazywam się Józef Kącki i witam Cię bardzo serdecznie w podcaście Leaders Island z warsztatu lidera. W tym programie razem z zaproszonymi mentorami dzielę się wiedzą i praktycznymi wskazówkami, jak być lepszym liderem dla swoich współpracowników. Jeśli jesteś liderem lub menedżerem, który chce się rozwijać, korzystać z doświadczeń innych praktyków i w ten sposób szlifować swoje umiejętności, zapraszam do warsztatu. Ten program jest zdecydowanie dla Ciebie. Good morning, good evening, hello, I warmly welcome you in the 26th episode of the podcast from the Manager's Workshop. Today we are speaking English because I have a guest from New York. One-time Jesuit seminar, later served as Managing Director of J.P. in Tokyo, Singapore, London and New York, before leaving the firm in 2001. He is the author of 6 books, including the best-selling Heroic Leadership, which has been translated into 11 languages. Now he currently chairs the board of CHI, one of the America's largest hospital system with more than 100 hospitals. Ladies and gentlemen, my and your guest is Chris Lowney.
Thank you for the chance to speak with you. It's my pleasure.
We talk an hour after the end of Light Conference where we host you as a guest. It was a good day for you in Krakow and in Poland, Chris?
Yes. So first of all, I've been to Krakow, maybe this is the 3rd or 4th time, and I always enjoy being here. So it just feels very nice on that level. And second, it's very interesting to me always to see the dynamism of what's going on in Poland, but also in Krakow. Each time it seems the economy and prospects keep going up, so that's nice. And then finally, I enjoyed the quality of the conversations that I had in the course of the day. So all in all, great day. I was very happy to be here.
Good. It's great to hear this. So let's start our episode with a philosophical question. Why do you do what you do in your life?
Aren't you supposed to start with easy questions? So, wow. I mean, that is a pretty deep question. I mean, it's a good question for people to reflect on. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I could say at the end of the day, I feel like the question I more and more ask myself as I get older is, am I using my gifts well? Do I feel like in some way I'm, to use a cliche, making the world better because of my journey through here? So that would be a kind of a big picture thing. But then, the particular of why do this rather than another thing, that to me is one of the great, challenges in life. I mean, I rarely feel 100% certain that what I'm doing is absolutely the best thing I could be doing or should be doing. I mean, I'm usually been happy with what I'm doing. I'm happy. But in terms of the cosmic way you ask the question, life is a journey, let's put it that way. And I guess we always have some question whether there is some other place we're being called or some other work we should be doing.
Chris, recently your latest book, Make Today Matter, book 10 Habits for a Better Life, has been released on the Polish market. You introduce readers to 10 simple yet powerful habits that will add up to a better life and better world. And so those habits emerge through inspiring stories of ordinary people who are making each day count in extraordinary ways. Because you have excellent managerial and leadership experience, and the listeners of this program are mainly leaders, so let's go today in this episode through those 10 habits defined by you, referring them to the world of business, the role of manager and leader. So let's start from habit number 1. point out the way. What does it mean for business leader?
Yeah. So point out the way, that phrase to me in a way is a code, so to speak, or a shorthand for take advantage of your leadership opportunity, have a clear sense of direction. So if you look in the dictionary, one of the definitions of leadership is to point out the way and or direction or goal and have influence on others toward this direction. And I think one of the dangers of modern life, whether it's in business, families, community, is there's so much going on that it becomes confusing, or we're just moving from one thing to another, we're carried along, and we're not intentional, we're not thinking about, oh gee, what's the priority? Where do we need to go? What do I need to do? So point out the way is saying, okay, do you have a clear sense of direction today? Do you know what you want to accomplish today? Or do you know what your team needs to do today? This kind of idea. And also, are you mindful that life is giving you a leadership opportunity today? You'll have a chance to have some influence on different people. So pointing out the way is a kind of an invitation to be mindful of the leadership opportunity and responsibility that we get each day of our lives.
Once upon a time, I heard a funny story when in the airplane there was a voice, "Hello, it's Captain speaking. I have 2 messages for you. First, the worst one, I don't completely know where we are. And the second is that we're flying very fast." And sometimes it's so true if we take a look for a business, corporation, departments, organization, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay, so let's go to habit number 2. Bring big hurt every day. Usually, and unfortunately, a big hurt is not associated with business corporation, rather with NGO or other kind of company. So what is this habit telling us?
Yeah. So maybe I could introduce it with an anecdote. When I worked in banking, one of my colleagues, before he came to banking, was a coach of high school students, track students. And he said that before a race, especially before an important race, he would put his face close to the face of the runner, and he would say, "You're going to run this race like it's the last race you will ever run in your life." And of course, we don't live that way, right? I mean, none of us thinks about this chance today with my kids in this meeting is the last time I'll be doing it. But of course, in life, we can't control what our opportunities will be. I don't mean you may die tonight, but I mean in general, what opportunity comes today will not be repeated exactly tomorrow. And so bring big heart is something like put your heart into it, take it seriously. And that's very hard to do because, work is tiring, work is frustrating, work is irritating. And, today, then tomorrow, then the next day, and soon it will be the weekend. That's what I'm waiting for. And there's a kind of a drudgery and a monotony that can set in. And, okay, that's understandable. But I think it doesn't really make, in the end, for a very satisfying life. And instead, if we somehow can find within ourselves a little bit of the spirit of that coach who said to the runner, run this race like it's the last race you're ever going to run. And of course, they all understood also, well, I'll be in a track meet next week also and the week after. So they, at some level, understand it's just a motivational tactic. But on the other hand, it meant something. It made them think about, there is something true, that I only will have so many chances. And so I need to seize this one and bring my heart to this one, not just walk through the motions.
You define habit number 3 as don't win the race, contribute to the human race. And my question mark was, do not win the race is for many managers sounds like you lose your job if you do not meet your KPI, MBOs, and others metrics.
Yeah. And so this habit comes right after we had a discussion about run this race like it's the last one of your life. And so it will seem maybe strange or contradictory that now all of a sudden I'm saying don't win the race, contribute to the race. But let me explain what I mean. And I was not, in the sense of this idea, not really referring to if you're on a sports team, you want to win. If you're in a corporation, you want to win. Rather, I was trying to describe an attitude toward one's life. And let me illustrate it this way, that I, at some time, worked in a very well-paying profession, banking. And at the end of the year, we would give people a bonus check, And for 5 minutes, people were always delighted with their bonus. But then they would start to compare, in their mind. Oh, I wonder how much that one got. Did this one get more than me? And it's natural, but I think somehow poisonous, that many people live their whole life this way, And the way they're measuring, or the way they're evaluating their own life, is only in comparison with other people. This one has a nicer car, this one has a better house, this one got promoted before I did. And to me, it's a kind of a formula for unhappiness by definition, because I can promise that no matter what you attain in life, you can always find someone who has something you do not have. And so people whose fundamental attitude is, I need to win, with respect to my fellow humans, that's really problematic. And instead, a very different attitude to life could be, I'm not here to compare myself to others, to win in that respect. Rather, I'm here somehow to make a contribution. And that, it seems to me, is a much richer formula for happiness, because then we're not living mostly in comparison to other people. Rather, we can evaluate, okay, well, am I making a contribution? Whether it's, I'm helping my spouse to be happier, I'm helping my kids to grow, I'm helping my team members at work to reach their potential, I'm helping our firm to accomplish its mission, and to me it's a much more satisfying way of living that we can point to and understand the ways in which we're making a positive contribution. We sometimes say that will you find your satisfaction inside out or outside in? In other words, outside in means that the only way I am satisfied is if others are approving of me, praising me, feel like I'm doing better, this kind of way. And so in a way, I'm giving control of all my happiness and satisfaction to those outside me, as opposed to living inside out. In other words, I have my own understanding of why I'm here and what I want to accomplish and what I want to contribute that will be my legacy to the world. And then, I judge myself by that standard, by the standard I've set.
So in natural way, fit to habit number 4, give away your sneakers and help someone today, because it sounds like an incentive for CSR activities, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a very strange phrase for a chapter title, give away your sneakers. So I guess I should explain where it comes from. As you, in the introduction, explained, I'm on the board of a large hospital system, and I heard this story that really touched me a lot. One of our about one of the doctors in one of our hospitals, and somebody came into the emergency room, I guess a street person, homeless person, and he was not badly hurt, but he had some chronic problem or some chronic condition, and the doctor on duty took care of him. Then when it was time to send him away, realized that the man had no shoes, And so the doctor, just without debating or thinking, just took off his own sneakers and gave them to the man and then sent him away. And the person who wrote a little story about this incident was a nurse who was in there at the time, and she said she remembers very clearly at the end of the day seeing this same doctor walking through the parking lot of the hospital to get to his car just wearing his socks, you know? But the point I want to make in that chapter is, you know, life presents all of us every day little chances to give away our sneakers. In other words, to do something that really does not cost us a lot, but that is of some value to another person. You know, in that same chapter of the book, I mentioned that I live in a large apartment building in New York City, and there is an elderly man who lives in the building, but sometimes just waits in the lobby. He's not waiting for anybody. He's obviously somehow lonely, and he just wants to talk to somebody, you know. And many times I just walk by saying to myself, oh, I have things to do, or I'm too tired or something. But, you know, for me, that's an easy opportunity for me to give away my sneakers, so to speak. In other words, life is just giving me this chance to spend 1 minute to have a little chat with that guy, and it's not a big sacrifice to me, and it means something to him. So, yeah, that's another one of the habits, you know, to get into this mindset of I will try to keep my radar open to these little situations of need or little opportunities that cross me every day of my life, and maybe every day of my life find some little metaphorical way in which I can give away my sneakers.
Habit number 5 sounds banish the inner demons, be free for what matters. And it's, let's say, hot habit for me because you have worked in the financial industry, which does not have a good PR, even in Poland or globally, I think. And it's not rather identify with humility. Yeah, am I right? So, is it possible to find with inner demons of the top of a corporation when there are a lot of opportunities to rather give them food, not to punish them?
So this habit, I spoke about this in other words during our conference today, and this habit, you mentioned in the introduction that I for some time was a Jesuit seminarian, was studying to be a Jesuit, and this habit really comes from the Jesuit tradition and from St. Ignatius. I think you also studied at a Jesuit college, and Jesuits are famous in Poland, so many people maybe relate to them. And let me try to explain the idea this way. So I think one of the problems of modern, we all have lots of decisions we have to make in life, sometimes very important decisions. Should I take this job, that job? Do I marry this person? When should I retire? What do I do when I retire? What kind of activities? You know, many, many questions come up in life. And the insight of St. Ignatius, who is the founder of the Jesuits, is what happens a lot of time. What we should do, what we want to do is, well, I will just make the choice that best serves my purpose or my mission or something. So in other words, if it's a corporation setting, I will make the choice that is best for our company. Or if it's in the team that I'm managing, let me make the choice that best serves the team member's ability to perform. Or if it's in my personal life, what will best serve my family or my future. And our only consideration should be what will best serve the mission, the purpose, the goal. But often what happens in life is we have these, call them inner demons. Things going on, you know, I'm proud, or I have big ego problems, or I need to be in control, or I'm always worried about my status, or I'm afraid of making a mistake, or I'm afraid of trying something new, or I'm afraid of changing. In other words, we have these things going on inside us, and if we're not careful, those inner demons make the decision for us. Maybe the best thing in my life would be for me to try the new job. Maybe that's exactly what will help me to grow and help me to develop. But if I'm afraid of something new, afraid I might go wrong, afraid of learning if my fears are in control, then maybe I will never take the job. You understand?
Yeah.
So I think the insight is we all have to make decisions in life, and before we get into evaluating the possibilities and choice, maybe we first have to evaluate what's going on inside me right now. In other words, are there inner demons, whether it's fears, greeds, pride, whatever these issues might be, that could interfere with my ability to make the right choice if I let them take over my psyche.
Let's go to the next habit. Change your little part of the world. So NBO, KPI is what they require for me as a manager, I could say, or many managers could say. You encourage them as they should take a step further, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, once again, maybe to explain the title will help to illustrate what I'm getting at there. So change your little part of the world. And let me briefly tell the story that's related to it. So once I had the privilege to be in the Philippines, and they took me to visit this massive garbage dump on the outskirts of the city. I'm sure everybody has seen television stories about some of these terrible refuse heaps on the outskirts of sometimes of very developing world countries. And, well, it's a situation of real misery, you know. I mean, it's terrible pollution, and people are there trying to earn a living by picking plastic and metal out of the garbage and selling it. It really makes you sad. And when I visited there, I noticed a little house in the bottom of this mountain of garbage where a couple of women had a kind of a preschool for the children of the families that were living on the garbage. And at one level, when you thought about it, what they're doing is ridiculous in one way, you know, because you say to yourself, man, I mean, this is a vast problem of every kind. There's, you know, environmental disaster here. There's problems of poverty here. There's problems of injustice here. There's a lot of substance abuse in that environment. And what are these two people doing with their little house tutoring a few kids? But the point is, they know they're not fixing the world. All they're worrying about is the little piece of the world that they can change, you know? And well, that I think is the wisdom or insight, you know, whether it's a part of our personal life or our professional and business life. We're not going to change the world, but we can do something today. If the only focus is, for example, we need to completely transform our corporate culture. Well, I have news for you. You won't do that today, nor this week. But what can you do today? What little part of your corporate world or your personal world can you actually change? And if you have that kind of focus, then there's at least the possibility that you make your way to the really transformative change that you aspire, you know? In other words, our big goals, whether it's improving our margin dramatically, or transforming our culture dramatically, or improving customer satisfaction dramatically, whatever is this big goal that we set out for ourselves, it will only discourage us if we spend our every single day focused on that goal, as opposed to, okay, what does that goal translate to today? What can we do today? What little part of the world can we change that keeps us on the road to this ambitious goal that we're trying to achieve?
I totally agree. Let's go to habit number 7. Keep walking up the hill and down the hill, persevere.
Yeah.
Why grit? Grit is so important.
So, so that habit is simply about perseverance, staying on the bike. And, I don't know anybody who has accomplished something very difficult or ambitious who does not know the value of perseverance. You work yourself with a lot of entrepreneurs and small companies, and you know that at least in the U.S. context, I'm sure it's exactly the same in Poland. Many entrepreneurs who end up being highly successful have failed 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 times on the way to being successful. And, often one of the things that sets apart the really successful entrepreneurs is not the brilliance of the idea, but rather the perseverance, the willingness to stay with it and to keep trying. A quote I like from Mandela is, judge me not by my successes. Rather, judge me by how many times I have fallen and got up again. And, life is like that a little bit. And that can be hard for people to acquire this habit, this skill of persevering.
Next habit, be more grateful, for me is a habit connected to your story that too many times compare ourselves to others, and we lost focus nowadays on our surroundings. Probably more or less of us has much better life than our parents and grandparents, but we are not able to say, wow, I'm really happy man or woman, and I'm really grateful that you do this for me, I could do this for you. These simple things which matter, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really remarkable, the kind of human instinct that I don't know what, maybe it's the pace of life, maybe it's the complexity of life, but we tend to be very problem focused, everything, the things that are going wrong, the things that are problems. I tell you a little story about that, a personal story. So my mother, she's now passed away many years. At one time she had a car accident. We don't need to go into the details, but there was a very long convalescence, very long. And I remember the first day that she had been a very vibrant, active woman. And now all of a sudden she was out, on her back. And I remember the first day that she stood up again from a wheelchair, finally had the strength to get up again and stand just for a couple of seconds. And then, she slowly acquired her strength. I remember very clearly the next day I was going to the train to go to some meeting. And in my neighborhood, the train station is down a hill, and there's staircases, maybe 50, 60, 70 stairs. Every day in my life, I would run up and down those stairs going to work. And I never thought about it. Never. I mean, who thinks about it, Running down the stairs, thinking about the weather, work, boy. Anyway, that one day, after seeing my mother stand up, I did think about it. And it was just incredible, the fact that I could walk downstairs. I couldn't imagine, how does this actually happen? How does there's bones, there's brain, there's eyesight, there's cartilage, muscle, and the intricacy of this machine that somehow functions is just remarkable. And at least for that moment in life, I remembered being so grateful for this little thing that I could walk that we never think about. And as many of the listeners know, there's very interesting psychological research now that connects gratefulness with happiness and productivity. Just being the reality of being grateful seems to make people happier usually, and happier people tend to be more productive. So, we could talk about the idea of gratitude as a spiritual idea, so to speak. Every spiritual tradition encourages people to be grateful. But if you said to me, Chris, we're not here for spirituality, this is a business podcast, I could also make the business case for gratitude, if you wish, which is namely, okay, you want your workforce to be more productive? If there's a lot of gratitude, people will be happier and they will be more productive. That's the science. I don't make that up. So whether from a spiritual perspective, a business productivity perspective, or both, gratitude is a really good habit.
So let's go to habit number 9, control the controllables. So listen to the still small voice. What controllables do you mean?
Yeah. So we just spoke a little bit about psychology and gratitude, and maybe I'll mention another psychological truth that we know, that researchers have taught us that the people who tend to be most effective in their work life and their personal life are people who have a habit of, as they put it, controlling the controllables. And this is what it means. That, in other words, let's take a workplace. For any of us, we have many concerns at work. There are many dimensions at work. Many things are going on. There are some things that go on that maybe we're not happy about, that might be frustrating, but that we can do nothing about it. It's another department, or it's the boss's job, or it's something else. I can't do anything about it. And some people, their whole sense of well-being, of productivity, and so on, becomes absorbed by their frustration or anger over this thing that they can do nothing about. And instead, people who are effective and productive tend to have an instinct not to become absorbed by such things, but rather to devote their energy and attention and focus to the aspects of their life that they can have a lot of influence and control. In other words, they're controlling the controllables. They're exerting themselves where they can have some influence and effectiveness. So that's the idea. When I was often if I informally was coaching subordinates or junior people, sometimes people would come, not people who work for me, but people in other areas, and, tell me all their frustrations about some other manager, or their manager.
Yeah.
And I would say to the first thing I would say, of course, is, okay, well, have you been able to speak to the person and share what it is that's frustrating you so much? And occasionally they can, but we all know in life, sometimes you don't feel you could do that. The manager won't listen, or it will be a waste of time, or whatever. So then what I would sometimes say to the person is, okay, so you don't feel you can present your worry or frustration to your manager. So let me ask you this question. In your work here at this company, how much of your day involves direct interaction with this manager who's annoying you so much? And often it was remarkably small percentage of their day. Usually they're on their own. They're managing themselves. Maybe 5% of their time is absorbed by their direct interactions with this manager that irritates them so much. So I would say to them, okay, look, my friend, you're giving 100% control of 100% of your well-being and happiness to this person who's involved in 5% of your life. And if you cannot discuss it with the person and work it out with them, then what I suggest to you is you have to mentally put that part of your life in a box and say, okay, the other 90% of my life, the other 95% of my life, I can control. I could create the environment in which I can perform as I wish, in which I could create the kind of interactions with others that I wish, and therefore, in the language that we're discussing now, I can control the controllables.
Clear. So let's go for the final habit, number 10. Answer this hurting words call for happy warriors. If there is a place in business for happy warriors?
Yeah, I absolutely, I think so. And here's what I mean by that. I know somebody, and she was, working toward a goal I don't mean like a short-term business goal, like increase sales by 20% or something like that, but rather, she was involved in an organization that, in a way, was trying to create a more just, an NGO, a more just situation. And frankly, she knew it was somehow impossible, that they were never going to achieve that in her lifetime. So what? She was a happy warrior. In other words, she believed deeply in this goal, and the fight was enough for her, and she was a warrior. She was going to come every day and do her best and try. And it was fulfilling to her, even though she knew it was not completely attainable, maybe even in her lifetime. So, every era has its challenges, and certainly the 21st century is bringing us all kinds of challenges, whether it's environmental, whether it's underemployment, whether it's pluralism and diversity and giving each person a fair chance to perform. Whether in my country it's creating an environment where people have adequate health care. Well, look, we could spend another 5 podcasts talking about all the challenges that we face in the world. And it really is a world that needs a lot of happy warriors. In other words, people who are energized by the opportunity to create some good in the world, and they're not going to be discouraged simply because the task will not be finished this month or even in their lifetime. They'll keep struggling, keep fighting.
Chris, thank you very much for showing us your point of view on the world. I'm sure that leaders can use these habits to change the world for the better. It's also the goal of this program, which I want to achieve by posting good, practical leadership. At the end of our episode, there is one more philosophical question. So imagine that this is the end, that your life is over, that you are on the other side and approaching to the gates of paradise. And at the gate of paradise, Saint Peter asks you about the name and surname. He checked the data, this data in his system. The question is, what would you like to hear from here in the first place?
So whenever you begin these questions with, I want to ask a philosophical question, then it begins to make me nervous, because then you have these big cosmic questions. So look, there's a short answer. The short answer to the question is, to your question is, I hope, we say, oh, come on inside. So that's the short answer. I don't know. If I could say more about it, maybe I would go back to something I said toward the beginning, namely a preoccupation of mine as I get older is, did I use my gifts well? And I ask myself that question, not every day, but certainly every year and now and then. And, those of the listeners who ever had some Bible study remember this story in the Bible where the master is going away and he gives 10 talents to one of his servants and 5 to another and 1 to another. Remember, and the idea of the story is, did they make good use of what they were given? The one with 5 says, "Oh, I invested, I made 5 more," and one of them just buried his talent. He didn't make any use of it. And so I guess that's a preoccupation of mine. Am I using my gifts well? I don't mean for my own benefit, but somehow for the benefit of the world. So I guess at the end of time, if I have the affirmation or validation that, yes, I've used my gifts well, then I'll be quite happy about that.
Chris, thank you for joining the episode of my podcast and coming to Poland. And I wish you all the best in the fighting for a better world.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the chance to speak with you. And thanks to you and your colleagues for the chance to be here in Krakow. It's my pleasure.
Dear listeners, it was a 26th episode of the podcast from the Managers Workshop. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next episode.